Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. In a hysterical presser at 2 a.m., Pakistan claimed that India would retaliate in 24 to 36 hours. The clock's run out, and the truth is finally catching up. Islamabad is playing the oldest trick in the book, crying wolf, to grab global headlines. And somehow the world seems to be falling for it. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to both India and Pakistan, and what did he have to say? We'll tell you about that. Meanwhile, in Islamabad, the mask is off, the military is done pretending, they're openly calling the shots by appointing the sitting ISI chief as the National Security Advisor. How is Pakistan protecting their biggest asset, the 2611 mastermind Hafiz Saeed? And why are tensions heating up at two borders? In other news, the first edition of the World Audio, Visual and Entertainment Summit, or WAVES Summit, took place in Mumbai today. How will it boost India's media and entertainment industry? The US and Ukraine have signed the long-awaited minerals deal. The US is reaching out to China for a trade deal. And what is the new wine fraud that is taking over the French capital? All this and more lined up. The headlines first. Iran condemns the US decision to slap new sanctions on the Islamic Republic, calls it economic terrorism. Washington has imposed sanctions on 7 companies involved in selling Iranian oil. This comes just days before another round of nuclear talks between the two countries. Bangladesh begins 3 days of mass political rallies. Rival groups will be staging demonstrations in the capital Dhaka to drum up support before the much-anticipated election. Polls could be held as early as December or at the latest by mid-2026. Former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia's Bangladesh Nationalist Party is tipped to win this election. North Korea and Russia begin building their first road bridge. The deal was sealed during Russian President Putin's visit to North Korea in 2024. The bridge will connect Russia's Far East to North Korea's northeastern region. Since the Ukraine war began, Pyongyang has deepened its military and political ties with Moscow. Paramilitary shelling hits the Sudan's presidential palace in Khartoum. It is the second such attack on the capital in a week. On Saturday, the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, targeted the Army's General Command headquarters. The paramilitary RSF has been at war with the Sudanese army for more than 2 years. And Japanese police arrest a man for plowing his car into primary school children. This incident took place in the western city of Osaka. 7 children have been injured. The suspect faces attempted murder charge. What we expected is happening. The world is buying into Pakistan's panic. They're not condemning Islamabad. Instead, they're counseling restraint to India. The Americans did that yesterday. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had 2 separate calls. This is the American foreign minister. He had 2 calls, one with India's foreign minister S. Jaishankar and the second with Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Now, Rubio told Sharif to condemn the Pahalgam attack. He also urged Pakistan to cooperate with the probe and deliver justice. Now, we get the intent here, but frankly, it means very little. Pakistan plotted and sponsored this terror attack. You can't just ask them for a simple condemnation. You need to hold them accountable. It's like asking a murderer to say sorry for the killing. Just doesn't cut it. Now we come to Rubio's call with Jaishankar. He promised to cooperate with India against terrorism, but he also urged de-escalation. Marco Rubio wants India to work with Pakistan to maintain peace in the region. Again, we get the intent. The Americans are scared of a nuclear flare-up. But how else can India fight this terror? The camps are in Pakistan, the plotters are in Pakistan, and the weapons are in Pakistan. These are not 2 different threats. They're one and the same. India's goal is to spread that message. Foreign Minister Jaishankar is on the job. He's reaching out to the non-permanent members of the UN Security Council. As you know, the UN Security Council, or UNSC, has 15 members. 5 of them are permanent. The remaining 10 are elected for 2 years, a 2-year term for each. And Jaishankar is reaching out to these non-permanent ones. Today, he spoke to his South Korean counterpart. Yesterday, he spoke to the Danish foreign minister. Before that, he spoke to officials from Algeria, Greece, Guyana, Panama, Slovenia, Sierra Leone, and Somalia. That's 9 non-permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. And the 10th? Well, that is Pakistan, which explains this outreach. If India retaliates, the UNSC will become key. It can pass media statements on the tensions. It can also pass binding resolutions. We saw one such statement over the weekend. The UNSC did condemn the terror attack, but it did not even name the attackers. It did not even name Pakistan. It was a weak and diluted statement. Why? Because Pakistan used its presence as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. And they forced them to water down the statement. Going forward, India must prevent this. New Delhi will have reasonable confidence in the permanent members. All of them, except maybe China, will back India. Hence the focus on non-permanent members. It tells you how coordinated India's response is. It's not just about the military options, it's also about diplomacy. Even with Pakistan, India is giving it a shot after everything. On Tuesday, Indian and Pakistani military officials spoke on a hotline. Now, this is a call that happens every week, but this time it had extra significance because Pakistan has been firing across the line of control. India warned them against continuing this. But no luck. Firing was reported on Tuesday night and Wednesday night. And that makes it 7 nights of ceasefire violations. Meanwhile, the government is taking more measures against Islamabad, both financial and strategic. The Indian airspace has now been shut to Pakistan, so no cargo planes, no commercial planes, and no military planes. No Pakistani aircraft can fly over India. This move is certain to hurt Pakistani carriers, especially their flights to East Asia. Experts say they will now have to fly over China or Sri Lanka, and that adds around 2 hours to the flying time. Similar moves are being considered at sea too. Right now, Pakistani ships are allowed to make port calls in India. Reports say New Delhi is looking to stop that. Same in the digital sphere. A number of Pakistani influencers and celebrities have been banned, like actors Ali Zafar and Mahira Khan, and influencers like Hania Amir. If you check their social media accounts in India, they won't be visible. Instead, you will find a message that says, "Account withheld due to legal request." A number of Pakistani news channels had already been blocked in India. Now Pakistani celebrities are also gone. The idea is to fight fake narratives and propaganda and to build pressure. Let's also look at the investigation in Kashmir. Sources say the terrorists may have reached Pahalgam by the 15th of April, and Baisaran Valley was not their only option. They were looking at 3 other targets as well, like the Betab Valley and the Aru Valley. Officials have identified around 20 overground workers. What are overground workers? These are people who support terrorists. They give them shelter, money, and logistical help. 20 such people have been identified. A number of these workers have been rounded up for investigation too. And what about the attackers? Well, still no trace of them. The security agencies are still hunting the terrorists, but the terrain is unforgiving. There are dense forests and natural caves. Plus, the attackers appear to be well trained. One official called it a game of cat and mouse. Finding these attackers, finding these terrorists will be India's biggest priority, but the retaliation against Pakistan may come sooner. We'll be tracking the moves closely. We've always known who really runs Pakistan. It's not the politicians, it's not the parliament, it is the army. Sometimes they do it openly with a coup. Most times they manage with soft coups and the facade of a civilian government with the generals calling the shots. Right now, it's a bit of both. Yes, there is a civilian government in place, but the military is not whispering orders behind closed doors anymore. It has grabbed the microphone and appointed a new National Security Advisor, NSA. It's this man, Lieutenant General Mohammad Asim Malik. Malik is the son of a 3-star Pakistani general. He was a top-performing cadet during his training. He then went to the Royal College of Defence Studies in London and Fort Leavenworth in the United States. He commanded an infantry brigade in Waziristan. But he hasn't commanded a corps, which makes his career trajectory even more interesting. Now, you may be wondering, why is all of this a big deal? Why are we talking about this NSA appointment in Pakistan? It's because Malik already has a day job. He is the head of the ISI, Pakistan's powerful and infamous spy agency. Malik was made the ISI chief last September, and now he is also the NSA, the National Security Advisor. So the same man now controls both intelligence and national security in Pakistan. It shows you how much the army likes him. Clearly, he has the confidence of Army Chief Asim Munir. And mind you, it's the first time that something like this has happened. In the past, Pakistan has appointed former generals as NSAs. Like in 2021, General Nasir Khan became the National Security Advisor of Pakistan. But this is the very first time a sitting ISI chief has become the NSA. You see, the NSA is usually a civilian advisor coordinating on national security. He is appointed by the Prime Minister, technically. The ISI chief is a military advisor. He is appointed by the army chief. Pakistan has decided to combine the two roles now. Yes, the budget cuts are hitting national security. But jokes aside, why now? The timing couldn't be more telling. More than a week ago, 26 people were gunned down in Kashmir's Pahalgam. Pakistani terrorists were behind this attack. India is readying a response, so Islamabad is circling the wagons. But to understand why, you have to look at their political ecosystem. This NSA position has been empty since 2022. It was a casualty of the PTI government collapse. Pakistan did not really need a national security advisor. Their army already runs the show. So Malik's appointment is not about filling a gap. It signals at something deeper, a crisis of confidence in the government. Pakistan's economy is flailing, domestic unrest is brewing, they're begging the IMF for more loans. And amid all of this, they face the prospect of punishment from India. So the army has decided it can no longer afford the illusion of shared governance. No more pretending to respect the civilian role. No more polite gestures towards democracy. The generals have made it clear, we are the state. In most democracies, the intelligence chief is usually like a ghost, powerful, but lurking in the shadows. But in Pakistan, that ghost has stepped into the spotlight. The rest of the world should stop playing ostrich and see Pakistan for what it is. A military state that uses terrorism as a policy tool. Now let's talk about Pakistan's duplicity. A country that claims to fight terror is quietly shielding terrorists. Several reports have emerged and they are unsettling. Pakistan has increased the security of this man, Hafiz Saeed, the founder and chief of Lashkar-e-Toiba, the mastermind of the 26/11 Mumbai terror attack, and a globally designated terrorist. Why is Pakistan beefing his security? For the whole world, Hafiz Saeed is a terrorist responsible for the death of innocent civilians. But for Pakistan's army, he is a VIP. Reports say the army has quadrupled Hafiz Saeed's security. Former SSG commandos have been deployed for this. Drones keep an eye in the sky. High-resolution CCTV cameras have been installed. All roads leading to Hafiz Saeed's house have been blocked. The area has been declared a no-drone zone. And all of this is happening in the thick of Lahore, in a densely populated residential area called Mohalla Johar Town. That is reportedly where Hafiz Saeed lives, where he's under Pakistan's so-called house arrest, serving a 46-year prison sentence for terror financing. All on paper. Islamabad calls it a sub-jail. But let's be real, this is a fortress. Basically, Pakistan is giving state-level security to a terrorist. And how do they justify it? By saying that Hafiz Saeed's life is under threat. Let me unpack this shameless facade. Hafiz Saeed is no ordinary Pakistani. He is a United Nations designated global terrorist. The US has placed a $10 million bounty on his head. He has masterminded multiple terror attacks on India, like the 26/11 Mumbai attack in 2008, the Mumbai train blast in 2006, the attack on the Indian Parliament in 2001, even the most recent Pahalgam terror attack. And here's why I say this. The Pahalgam attack was carried out by a group called the Resistance Front, or TRF. It is an offshoot of the Lashkar-e-Toiba. The TRF's current head is a man named Saifullah Khalid, a former Lashkar-e-Toiba commander and a close aide of the same Hafiz Saeed. Basically, it's a full circle. The TRF is just another name for the Lashkar-e-Toiba. They work hand in glove to carry out terror attacks. So Hafiz Saeed's role in the Pahalgam attack is a given. It's quite clear. And that explains the sudden hike in his security, because this time India's stance is also clear. Terrorists and their backers will face consequences. And this is how Pakistan is bracing by increasing the security of their most prized terrorist, Hafiz Saeed. Instead of handing over a global terrorist to face justice, Islamabad is going out of its way to protect him. Basically, Pakistan believes that India's response is on its way, and Hafiz Saeed, a global terrorist living freely in Lahore, could be a target. So they're turning his residence into a military outpost. And frankly, we're not surprised. Harboring terrorists is Pakistan's core competency. Remember Osama bin Laden? The terrorist who masterminded the 9/11 attacks in the US. It happened in 2001, and Pakistan kept Osama bin Laden safe for years in a compound in a city called Abbottabad. Osama bin Laden was housed right next to a Pakistani military station. It took the Americans 10 years to figure that out. In 2011, they launched a special operation on Pakistani soil and avenged the 9/11 attacks. The rest, as they say, is history. Bin Laden once had the blessings of Pakistan's army. Now it is Hafiz Saeed. For years, India has demanded his extradition, yet the world's most wanted terrorist lives freely in Pakistan. But this isn't just about one terrorist. It's about a state-sponsored ecosystem. Hafiz Saeed may be a VIP in Pakistan, but he's a threat for India and for the rest of the world. So by shielding him, the message from Pakistan to the world is this. In a country that is on the brink of an economic collapse, in a country where citizens go hungry, terrorists and terrorism remains their top priority. So Pakistan is protecting its most important asset, and that is Hafiz Saeed. What about the rest of the country? We are seeing some new developments and movements. Of course, none of this is official. It is based on intel reports and surveillance. Pakistan is apparently rushing resources to the frontier, both the LOC and the international border. This includes radars, air defense systems, and soldiers. Reports say 2 divisions have been moved to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, or POK. The 6th Armored Division, which includes tanks and combat vehicles, and the 7th Infantry Division, which is made up of foot soldiers and light artillery. Radars are also being placed near POK. One such facility is in Chor in Sindh. Pakistan has set up a TPS-77 radar site there. This is just 60 kilometers from the border. And what does it do? Well, radars monitor the airspace. They detect aircraft and possible airstrikes. And speaking of aircraft, where are Pakistan's fighter jets? Well, sources say the Air Force has cut down operations by 50%. Their goal is to avoid mishaps in the sky. As for the jets, they are being moved around. Some reports say the F-16s have been shifted to Lahore and Rawalpindi. Others say they are heading to Gwadar. Why Gwadar, though? Because it's located far away from the border. Perhaps the idea is to protect these jets from Indian missiles. And finally, you have air defenses. Pakistan's best system is the HQ-9. This is a missile system produced by China. These are also being used to secure the border area. Clearly, there's a lot of focus on the skies. Pakistan is using radars, electronic systems, and air defenses. Maybe they fear a repeat of 2019. That's when Indian Air Force jets crossed into Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They destroyed terror camps in Balakot in Pakistan. Last time, Islamabad was caught napping, so this time they are on alert. So alert that they're imagining stuff. Look at this report in Pakistan state media. It says Indian Rafale jets were patrolling the skies over Kashmir, so Pakistan scrambled jets of its own. Islamabad claims that they managed to scare away the Rafales. Sounds like classic Pakistani fiction. Defense experts have dubbed it propaganda. There is no visual evidence, no radar footage, not even an official statement from Pakistan's military. Plus, Rafales are frontline assets. They do carry out operations over Indian skies, and these planes and pilots do not panic. They are built to handle routine interceptions. Maybe it's all part of mind games, and that's what India will have to guard for. Pakistan cannot match India in conventional warfare. So they could resort to unconventional means, like propaganda and cyber attacks. In fact, last week, the Indian Army's nursing college website was hacked. The hackers left a message on the screen. It said the two-nation theory is not just an idea, it is the truth. And it's very similar to what Pakistan's army chief said. Days later, the army school websites were hacked and their home pages were defaced. This week, the website of Rajasthan's education department was hacked. The hackers left a message on the page. It called Pahalgam an inside job. So overall, Pakistani cyber attacks seem to be rising. A common hack is to put the Pakistani flag on OTT websites. Such instances have gone up by 10 to 15%. Clearly, there is a dedicated cyber campaign here. India must guard against such strategies. We may have the advantage on the battlefield, but Pakistan will play dirty. Our air defenses can handle their aircraft, but our firewall needs to handle the hackers. Our next story is a tale of two borders, one burning with violence, the other bracing for it. On one side is the Lipa Valley. This is in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir or POK. On the other side is India's eastern flank, the border with Bangladesh. Is this a coincidence or a calculated move to threaten India? Let me start with the Lipa Valley. This is a 9-kilometer stretch near the line of control. It is under Pakistan's occupation, this valley. It is one of the most heavily militarized zones in the region. And now it is a major flashpoint. Pakistani posts in the Lipa Valley have fired into India. India has responded in kind, and the retaliation has been too much to handle. There are reports of casualties in Pakistan, but their army, as always, remains tight-lipped. So why is the Lipa Valley turning into a flashpoint? Let me give you some context. This valley has for long been a route for infiltration. Terrorists from Pakistan would enter India via the valley, and they would get cover fire from the Pakistan army. Every time tensions have flared between India and Pakistan, the Lipa Valley has been the first to turn hot. Let's go back to the 1971 war. That's when India helped in the liberation of Bangladesh. The main military campaign was in India's east, but Jammu and Kashmir also saw intense fighting, including in the Lipa Valley. India inflicted severe damage on Pakistan. Pakistani military posts were destroyed. Indian troops even captured the whole of the Lipa Valley. Pakistan was eventually defeated in Bangladesh. 93,000 troops, 93,000 Pakistani troops surrendered in that war. The Shimla Agreement was signed, and India had to return the Lipa Valley to Pakistan. Fast forward nearly 4 decades to the year 2016. The Lashkar-e-Toiba attacked an Indian army camp. 19 soldiers were killed in Uri in India. India retaliated with cross-border raids. Pakistani posts in the Lipa Valley were destroyed again. Now the area is tense again. India's military planners are considering seizing the Lipa Valley. These are just reports as of now, but the storm is brewing. So that's the story of the first border we told you about, the Lipa Valley. Now let's shift gears to India's eastern front. That is the second border. This is India's border with Bangladesh. The Indian army is increasing readiness along this border. The reason, you ask? Pakistan, of course. Indian intelligence has issued a warning. There's Pakistani presence in Bangladesh. This includes ISI and army officials. Indian agencies believe that Pakistan is reaching out to radical Islamists in Bangladesh. There are whispers of sleeper cells and extremist groups. And look at the timing of these warnings. They come after tensions flare between India and Pakistan. Is Islamabad looking at a second front? Well, there have been signs. We told you about ISI chief Asim Malik on today's show. Pakistan's recently appointed NSA, that's Asim Malik, he was in Bangladesh in the month of January, and he met Bangladesh's army chief in Dhaka. And the two agreed to increase military cooperation between Pakistan and Bangladesh. The result is this. Bangladesh has opened its doors. Pakistani army officials reached Dhaka in February. They are now training the Bangladeshi army. An irony just died 1,000 deaths. Pakistan was once the oppressor in Bangladesh. Their army, the Pakistani army, mass raped women and carried out a genocide in Bangladesh, and now they are training the Bangladeshi army. India has raised concerns about this. Intelligence agencies are also sounding the alarm. The truth is that Bangladesh under Mohammad Yunus remains shaky. Radical Islamist outfits have become popular, like Jamaatul Mujahideen and Ansar al-Islam. Given the Pakistan Army's affection for radicals, they could mobilize threats in Bangladesh. So India is not taking any chances. The army has increased patrols along the Bangladesh border. The message from New Delhi is this: there will be zero tolerance. So what are we looking at? Two separate incidents on two separate borders, one along the LOC, the other along Bangladesh. But they have markers of coordination. For now, India is watching every move on both the fronts, Pakistan to the west and Bangladesh to the east. Pakistan says it is a victim of terrorism, but the evidence against it is overwhelming. From Osama bin Laden's hideout in Abbottabad to Hafiz Saeed roaming freely in Lahore, from Lashkar-e-Toiba to Jaish-e-Mohammed to the Resistance Front, every group is raised, armed and blessed by Rawalpindi. The United Nations says 12 global terror groups are based in Pakistan, and they have been supported by the Pakistani army. For years, Pakistan has said that it is fighting terrorism, but all they have done is fund terror factories. Governments, international agencies, think tanks, even Pakistanis themselves have shared evidence of Rawalpindi's role in spreading terror across the world. Our next report brings you more.
Over the years, the world has spoken about Pakistan's support for terrorism. Whether it's keeping the mastermind of the 9/11 terror attack, Osama bin Laden, in a safe house next to a Pakistani army base, or increasing security for the 26/11 Mumbai attack mastermind Hafiz Saeed at his Lahore residence. State-sponsored terrorism has been Pakistan's forte. From foreign governments to international agencies and even Pakistanis themselves, Pakistan's role in spreading terrorism is a well-known fact. Let's start with the puppet masters, the generals in Rawalpindi who run the show. No confessions can top the ones given by Pakistani army chiefs. In 2018, then Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa shocked the world. He said Pakistan's army and intelligence services knew how to work with good terrorists and bad terrorists. Even former Army Chief and President Pervez Musharraf accepted Pakistan's role in supporting terrorism. Musharraf admitted that Pakistan trained and equipped the Lashkar-e-Taiba. So the Pakistani army, which has been accused of funding, training and supporting terrorists, have openly accepted their involvement. There's a popular saying, countries have an army, but the Pakistani army has a country. So when the Pakistan army paves the way, the country follows. In 2019, then Prime Minister Imran Khan visited the United States, where he accepted that Pakistan had trained the global terror group Al-Qaeda and other jihadist outfits. He also acknowledged that there were thousands of terrorists on Pakistani soil. Similar declarations were made a year prior in 2018, when then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif opened a can of worms. He publicly acknowledged that dozens of terror groups were operating in Pakistan. Only he preferred to call them non-state actors. When the army and the political brass have made peace with Pakistan supporting terrorists, why should the terrorists themselves not speak up? In 2011, Syed Salahuddin, then chief of the Hizbul Mujahideen, openly declared that his group operated from Pakistan. Hizbul Mujahideen is the same group that's a designated terrorist outfit by India, Canada, the United States and the European Union. In fact, Pakistan's own Terrorism Investigation Agency confirmed that Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists that carried out the 26/11 Mumbai attacks trained on Pakistani soil. And there have been other forms of evidence that point all terror-related fingers at Pakistan. Like books written by former ISI chief Asad Durrani, where he accepted that Islamabad supported Hafiz Saeed. Pakistani political scientist Aisha Siddiqa in her book wrote about how the Pakistani army funds extremist groups. There are hundreds of books and thousands of papers that share evidence about Pakistan's support for terrorism. The United Nations says that at least 12 global terror outfits are based in Pakistan. From Lashkar-e-Taiba to Jaish-e-Mohammed to Hizbul Mujahideen, the Pakistani army has been involved in raising, funding and arming them. Pakistan's state-sponsored terrorism has been exposed with overwhelming evidence. The only thing missing is an official ministry for terrorism.
All the focus is on the border, but away from the action, a major summit was held in Mumbai today, the WAVES Summit. Now, WAVES is an acronym. It stands for World Audio, Visual and Entertainment Summit. This is the first ever edition. It is being hosted by the Indian government in Mumbai. And today was day one. Over the next 3 days, multiple events are lined up. 42 plenary sessions, 39 breakout sessions and 32 master classes. It's bringing together people from old and new media. You've got actors, you've got content creators, you've got the news media, and also musicians and technicians. Put together, participants from almost 75 countries. But what's the objective here? What are we trying to do? The idea is to boost Indian media and entertainment industry's profile, to turn India into a hub for content creation. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated the event today, and he spoke about this. He invited creators across the world to come to India. He told them, create in India for the world. Listen in.
यही समय है, सही समय है. ये क्रिएट इन इंडिया, क्रिएट फॉर द वर्ल्ड का सही समय है. ऑरेंज इकोनॉमी के इस बूम में मैं वेव्स के इस मंच से देश के हर युवा क्रिएटर से कहूंगा, आप चाहे गुवाहाटी के म्यूजिशियन हो, कोची के पॉडकास्टर हो, बेंगलुरु में गेम डिजाइन कर रहे हो या पंजाब में फिल्म बना रहे हैं, आप सभी भारत की इकोनॉमी में एक नई वेव ला रहे हैं.
One word stands out there, and that's the orange economy. Modi said this orange economy will become a key pillar of India's GDP. What does that mean? What is the orange economy? It refers to the business linked to creativity. Some people also call it the creative economy. But why orange? Because orange is seen as the color of creativity, like red is seen as the color of danger or even love. White is seen as the color of peace. Likewise, orange is seen as the color of creativity. This economy also includes a lot of creative fields. For example, theatre, films, dance. In the new age, influencers and online streamers. Even culinary and cultural displays, all of these are part of the orange economy. The United Nations says it makes up 3% of the global GDP and it employs almost 30 million people the world over. In India, the orange economy made up 2.5% of the GDP before the pandemic. Now it is around 1.5%. Chances are these numbers will surge ahead because creativity has so many platforms now. You've got multiple social media apps. You've got streaming platforms like YouTube. So the reach is infinite. The question is, where does India figure in this race? Traditionally, we have looked at creative arts in a very specific way, whether it's movies or dance or art forms. We see them as a soft power tool, a chance to take India's culture to the world. It's important, but we can do more, and times are changing. Soft power is not limited to outreach anymore. It can be used as a hard power tool as well. I'll give you two ways how. First, the economic benefits. Content creation is a multi-billion-dollar economy. It can create tens of thousands of jobs, and it can fill your treasuries. But for that, you need to create a robust ecosystem at home. Consider India's export of yoga. There are thousands of yoga studios around the world right now. Is that soft power? Yes, it is. But does it benefit India financially? No, it does not, because the business is happening abroad. Same with video games. Indian designers are a key part of the global gaming industry. Indian cities and culture have also featured in some games. It counts as soft power, but it does not really benefit us beyond a point. And that is why the Wave Summit is important. It aims to build a robust system at home so that content creators do not have to go abroad. Secondly, if used right, soft power can give you leverage. Consider the example of TikTok. The Chinese created this app and its algorithm. They exported it to the world, and suddenly the world was hooked on short-form videos. They know that TikTok is a security nightmare, but their lives and businesses are still dependent on it. And that gives China leverage. Leverage to influence and force policy changes. Very similar to hard power, to how hard power works. Hollywood used to have that sort of an effect. But nowadays, it's lost its monopoly. So my point is quite simple. We should start seeing soft power differently. It's not just about entertaining people and building people-to-people ties. There are tangible financial and strategic gains to be made here. The Wave Summit is a recognition of that. Let's see what happens next. If there is one thing that Donald Trump loves, it is a good deal. And after months of intense negotiations, he has finally hammered out one with Ukraine. Washington and Kiev have signed the long-awaited minerals deal. Think of it as a business transaction, or in politically correct words, an economic partnership agreement. It gives the US access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals like graphite, titanium, and lithium. The US will get a share of profits from their future sale. In return, Washington will continue to invest in Ukraine's defense and economic recovery. After months of cozying up to the Kremlin, this is a major step towards bilateral relations between Kiev and Washington. So what does it mean for the war in Ukraine? How will this deal work? Why do Trump and Zelensky want it? And what do they hope to get out of it? Our next report tells you.
After months of rising tensions and weeks of intense negotiations, the US and Ukraine have finally signed the minerals deal. It gives the US access to Ukraine's mineral wealth, and it gives Ukraine American protection in the war against Russia. Zelensky had proposed this idea to Donald Trump. It was part of what he called a victory plan, and Trump liked the idea, but maybe a bit too much. He demanded compensation for the US aid given to Ukraine since the war began in 2022. He sought $500 billion in compensation. This is around 4 times the amount Washington has paid, which stands at about $123 billion. So Zelensky rejected the idea, saying that 10 generations of Ukrainians would have to pay it off. But as Trump drastically scaled back US security commitments the world over, Zelensky became more accepting of the deal. The initial agreement was due to be signed in February this year, but it fell apart after a heated exchange in the White House, with Trump accusing Zelensky of gambling with World War III. Negotiations turned bitter. But a breakthrough was achieved at the Pope's funeral last week. Trump and Zelensky had a face-to-face meeting on the sidelines of it. Zelensky managed to eke out some concessions, and voila, the deal has come through. So, how will it work? The US and Ukraine will establish a joint reconstruction investment fund. Each side will have equal voting rights. It will allow Washington and Kyiv to share profits from the future sale of Ukraine's mineral and energy reserves. The deal will finance mineral, oil and gas projects in Ukraine for the first 10 years. The resources will remain the property of Ukraine, but the profits will be distributed between the partners. What do the two sides get out of this? For Ukraine, this means not having to pay back any so-called debt to the United States. It will give Trump an economic incentive to continue to invest in Ukraine's defense, or in other words, security assistance. The fund will also spur Ukraine's economic recovery from the war. As for the United States, the benefit is rare earth mineral riches. Ukraine has vast reserves of critical minerals like graphite, titanium and lithium. They are highly sought after because they are used in the production of electronics, renewable energy, military weapon systems and so on. The global production of these rare minerals is strategically important, and it has long been dominated by China, where 90% of the world's current rare earth stocks are sourced. So, amid the ongoing trade war, the United States has been desperate for an alternative, and it has finally found one in Ukraine. Now, the deal may have been signed between the US and Ukraine, but let's not forget the third player, Russia.
Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end.
The language used in the deal is a showcase of solidarity towards Ukraine, more than what's usual for the Trump administration. It comes amid Trump's growing frustration with Putin over ceasefire talks. The deal refers to the war as Russia's full-scale invasion and calls the Kremlin the Russian war machine. It's clear that with one signature, the deal has given Trump a personal stake in Ukraine's fate. It has given Ukraine a big guarantee to brave the war. But until Russia joins the US and Ukraine at the supposed peace talks table, the fate of this gruesome war continues to hang in the balance.
The US-China trade war has been quite the roller coaster. Donald Trump slapped tariffs on China, Beijing fired back, Trump doubled down, 145% tariffs on Chinese goods, up to 245% on some items. 245% tariffs. China hit back harder. And the cycle began in February. It continued for 2 months. Trump expected China to blink, but they held on. So the US, it seems, is starting to fold. First, they rolled back tariffs on consumer electronics, and now they're pushing for a trade deal with China. Reports suggest the US has reached out to the Chinese. But is the deal really in the works? Let's look at where things stand. Last week, Donald Trump gave an interview to the Time magazine. He said Xi Jinping had called him. China immediately rejected this claim. They said no such call had taken place. Then, on the 24th of April, Trump made another claim. He said that the US and China are talking.
Can you clarify with whom the US is speaking with China? They're saying it's fake news that trade talks are happening.
Well, they had a meeting this morning, so I can't tell you. It doesn't matter who they is. We may reveal it later.
Who were these people? What are they talking about? The US president gave no details. Then came a prompt denial from Beijing. China said no such talks were taking place. In fact, Beijing called it bullying.
They make up bargaining chips out of thin air, bully and go back on their words, which makes everyone see one thing more and more clearly. That is, the so-called reciprocal tariffs severely go against historical trends and economic laws, impact international trade rules and orders, and seriously impair the legitimate rights and interests of countries.
On April 28, Trump's Treasury Secretary was asked about this. He said the onus was now on China, that they must dial down tensions. So Washington was constantly changing its stance. Beijing was constantly denying talks. And they kept going back to square one, a trade war between the world's two biggest economies. But now there seems to be some sort of a détente. Chinese media claims that the US has reached out. They contacted Beijing through multiple channels to talk tariffs. And what has China's stance been like? Well, they haven't said anything explicitly, but their state media is softening its position. They say that there is no harm in talking, that engaging with the United States is okay. So there are some signs of a truce, or they're working towards a truce. But it's not happening fast enough because Trump's tariffs were announced last month. And since then, the US economy has been reeling. It has contracted for the first time in 3 years. The GDP decreased by 0.3% in the first quarter. Inflation is soaring, and it is all because of Trump's tariffs. US businesses are yet to feel the full impact of it, but the tensions have already hit exports, especially that of soybean. Cargo shipments from China have also plummeted. But Trump remains confident. He says it is Beijing that will feel the blow.
I know that China is doing very poorly right now. I just saw some reports coming out, and I don't want that to happen to China. I like the president a lot, President Xi. I don't want it to happen. I was actually saddened to hear it, but they are getting absolutely hammered in China.
But is China really feeling an impact? President Xi Jinping says Beijing won't back down. China's foreign ministry even released a video. It said it would never kneel down to the United States.
The U.S. has stirred up a global tariff storm and deliberately targeted China, playing a 90-day pause game with other nations. Kneeling only invites more bullying. China won't kneel down.
But what about the economic impact? Well, right now, Chinese businesses are looking beyond America. They're choosing other markets like South America and West Asia. But that does not mean that the Chinese economy is immune to all of this. There is a slowdown in manufacturing in China. Export orders have plunged. So the first signs of damage are there. It could only get worse in the coming days and weeks. So where does that leave us? Right now, both countries are stuck in a strange kind of limbo. The US is trying to look tough, but it's clearly hunting for an off-ramp. China is pretending to not care, but make no mistake, it is watching every move. Both economies are bleeding. Neither wants to be the first to blink, but someone will have to. Now, we don't know who that will be, not yet. But if you squint at the signs, they seem to point to Washington. In this first round, America came calling. China let the phone ring. And sometimes in diplomacy, as in dating, that says everything. Imagine this. You're having lunch at a cafe in Paris, enjoying a glass of wine, but it's not the fancy wine you paid for. You've been scammed. It turns out this happens more often than we realize because apparently wine fraud is rife in the French capital and tourists are usually the victims. Cafes have been caught doing this, covertly pouring cheap alternatives in place of the premium wines that customers paid for. And if this is appalling, let me tell you, it gets worse. Some cafes collect leftover wine. They put it in a single bottle and then serve it during happy hours. This is a not-so-happy finding of a recent investigation. So what's behind this wine crime? And if you visit France, how can you avoid being duped? Here's a report.
A trip to France doesn't get more French than wine. Whether it is a glass for the good times or a sip to challenge your palate, wine is an essential part of French culture, politics, and society. It is the way into a French person's heart. So, wine has found its way into the itinerary of almost every tourist visiting Paris. But what if the pricey plunk is not worth the cost, quite literally? Have you heard of repotting? It is a technique that involves switching out the wine a customer has ordered with the contents of a more budget-friendly bottle. This may sound appalling, but it is exactly what many Parisian cafes have been caught doing with tourists, often being the prime victims. Recently, a French newspaper conducted an investigation. It sent 2 sommeliers to cafes in Paris to get a taste of deception. The experts pretended to be tourists. They ordered wine by the glass. And what they received was shocking. A pour of Chablis or Sancerre, which costs about $10, was substituted for a Sauvignon, which was the cheapest wine on the menu, costing about $6. When the investigators complained about this, the waiter brought another glass of the wrong wine. According to the report, such scams are rife in Paris, especially in tourist hotspots. Waiters covertly pour cheap wine in place of the premium glasses paid for by customers. And it gets worse. Sometimes they put leftover wine in a single bottle and serve it during happy hours. Waiters at restaurants and bars have confirmed this practice. They say that it is widespread, and it happens for a range of reasons. Bosses often encourage this wine fraud to maximize profits. Waiters sometimes want to avoid opening expensive bottles, which can spoil if left open for long, and tourists rarely discover the trick. This may sound like mastermind manipulation to cut costs, but if found out, restaurants will have to pay the price. In France, cheating customers over wine is punishable by law. It comes with 3 years in prison and a fine of about $34,000. That said, it is hard to impose. French authorities have been fighting wine fraud for centuries now. Inspectors check serving practices regularly, but their resources are limited. And there are more than 60,000 restaurants, cafes, and bars in Paris alone. So, if you are planning a trip to Paris, how can you be more careful during wine o'clock? You can insist on having wine poured from the bottle in front of you, with the label visible, as is required by law. After all, being cheated out of high-end wine doesn't just hurt one party. Experts say that the repotting scam rebounds on the restaurants and wine producers as well. It spoils the image of fine wine and often pushes customers to order less of it. So the disappointment goes both ways. Especially when wine consumption is falling the world over. France is one of the key global producers of wine. But last year, 3.6% less wine was consumed in country. So the repotting scam may save cost, but it also leaves a bad taste. At a time when wine is already in the red.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Turkish police detain hundreds of May Day protesters in Istanbul. Floods and storms batter New Zealand's capital as it is hit by the strongest winds in a decade. And for the first time, a virtual boy band enters the prestigious Billboard 200 global chart. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1889, May Day was first observed as a labor holiday. The origin is linked to the international labor movement, especially the movement for 8-hour work days. Today, it is celebrated across the world to mark the achievements of workers. We are leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.